With the plethora of news reports coming out lately about UFO sightings, with confirmed sightings of UAPs or unidentified aerial phenomenon from military sources, sometimes from the Pentagon, sometimes from the pilots themselves, and sometimes from government agencies, both from the United States and foreign governments, one has to think that either the gig is up because governments can't keep a lid on disclosure for much longer, or governments have resigned themselves to fate that they can't keep our airspace safe from all threats, foreign and domestic. It's an often repeated theme in UFO circles over the decades that the reason for a government cover-up could be as simple as the government not wanting to cause a mass panic. If this perception of our people has changed, basically that the government thinks our people can handle it psychologically, then it might serve the government's interests if people actually think that UFOs are real. There's powerful boogeymen out there that might be wanting to get us. So if we want to be kept safe, or as safe as possible, we better do what the government tells us to do. We don't expect perfection, that the good old Air Force might no longer be able to keep us safe from all threats, but that's okay. We understand. We just hope that the government does the best job that it can and will cooperate with whatever that is. Ramifications stemming from this remote possibility would be huge, which would impact major threads of knowledge in our world, from philosophy to theology to science and engineering. Perhaps the most likely reason why the US government would reverse decades of efforts to cover up the UFO phenomenon in recent years is because the US doesn't want to get behind the curve. It doesn't want to lose out to other world powers like China, who's fast becoming the new global superpower. If the US takes the approach that anyone who looks up and sees something unexplainable is kooky dukes, as if they're crazy for seeing something and reporting it to the authorities, if we're going to bury the subject behind walls of secrecy and nonsensical explanations like swamp gas, while other powers like China take this phenomenon very seriously, that could prove to be an even greater threat to our nation than the supposed panic that we once expected to occur if they did disclose that this phenomenon is real. Well, they have disclosed that it's real. We are past disclosure, and it's like everybody is still asleep. Forget not panicking. How in the world could it possibly be true that people aren't even paying attention to this? The US has confirmed that these flying objects, whatever they are real. Anybody who's watched my videos before knows that I'm a real stickler for people who think in black and white, people who think in this or that, people who think in red and blue, us and them, rich and poor, black and white, young and old, and, Democrat and Republican, and every other way that they can divide us all up into two groups before they figure out what to think, feel, and believe about anything. These people are destructive. These people are also the influencers. These people are also the popular. These people are also those with power and authority over us to dictate to us how to live, what to think, how to vote, what to expect, what to do, what to say, and what not to say. There is a very strong tendency for people to think that way, and it doesn't bode well for understanding this phenomenon correctly either. Either they're ours, meaning that they're some kind of a secret program or secret project of the U.S. military, that the U.S. military is making flying saucers or flying pyramids or flying Tic Tacs, or that they're visitors from outer space. And just because we can't think of any other possibilities that it might be, doesn't mean that it's not one of a million different things. Now, I'll throw a few other possibilities of what it could be right here. These could be objects or entities that have been with us on this earth the entire time, and we don't even really know it. So how do you explain that? What would that be? What are the theological implications for that? They're not visitors from outer space, they're our neighbors. Are these godlike entities? Are these the basis for our theological belief, for our religious belief? Another possibility is that they're interdimensional travelers. They're not coming from outer space. They're not coming from some other star system where they're just going from point A to point B and back again. That they are traveling through some type of a wrinkle in time and space, filtering through, or they're overlapping with another layer of reality, maybe another layer of the universe. Reality that we can perceive is just one of those layers, but every now and then there's a little bit of overlap. It isn't a perfectly closed system. There is breaks, there are breaches in the line between one reality and the other. Is that the basis for our religious belief? When we have evidence that seems to exist and it comes up that could possibly explain things like religion, religious belief, things like a belief in God, a belief in the afterlife, and we reject it all as not being related, I think that's rather foolish. In theological circles, it's been said that we are the chosen ones. And it's true. We are the only breakout species on this planet that we know of that have evolved at an exponentially accelerating rate. As beautiful and majestic as all the other animal species are, their evolution has plateaued at a certain point that it's never gone beyond. A chimpanzee can't do calculus, and as far as we can tell, it never will. As such, we are the stewards of our planet, and it's up to us to determine what that means. Religions say that God made us in God's own image. This confers neatly with many abduction claims of running into bipedal, humanoid-like figures, the cosmonauts who saw smiling angels outside their spacecraft the size of jumbo jets. When we wear the God helmet and stimulate our right temporal lobes, we see alien-looking figures all around us. If that stimulation heightens our senses, they might not need the UFOs because they're already here. They're all around us all the time, observing us, perhaps even controlling us. Here are the Pyramid UFOs, a particularly astonishing photo from the video footage showing what looks exactly like a Pyramid of Giza flying through the air, except it's reflecting multiple colors of light and it has a type of pulsing light that almost looks like a heartbeat. Could these UFOs answer the question, why did the Egyptians build the pyramids? If these strange objects set down and had some visitations with the ancient Egyptian civilization, which would seem like a strong possibility when at the time, Egypt was by far the most advanced civilization on the planet, that could have driven the belief systems of ancient Egyptians towards new ideas that we know that they had adopted in their society, such as theism, ceremonial burial, and the belief in an afterlife. The traditional archaeological excuse for why the pyramids exist, that they were tombs that their pharaohs were buried in, doesn't hold water when there are only 2 large pyramids with interior passages and chambers that were allegedly built for that purpose. The 3 Abrahamic monotheistic religions we know today were planted in this area, going all the way back to Exodus when Moses freed the Hebrews from the Pharaoh. Religion gets so much abuse from so many people on the internet today, but it's worth pointing out that at its core, religion is simply a powerful language that ancient people used to describe and explain what they were witnessing and becoming enlightened by. I think these visitations surely would have looked like God at the time in the eyes of these ancient people. It's understandable that they would have bound up this new knowledge with morals and norms and values that had been handed down to them from previous generations. This gives massive credence to the whole concept of an invisible man in the sky that's watching us. I think we're going to learn in future generations that this is absolutely correct. The religious had it right all along. The atheists will be proven dead wrong in their blind denials, and with the disclosure event coming up in June, where the U.S. government is going to dump the dirt on everything it knows, supposedly, I think we're all going to learn in our own lifetimes that God, or God-like beings, actually exist. They're just not exactly like our ancestors believed them to be. So yes, religions get a lot of the details wrong, but the nut of truth that they all have in common is going to be proven right after all. Some people might think that this is going to kill theology, but I think it's more correct to say it's going to give birth to an entire new theology, unlike anything that we've ever seen before. I want to close this video out with Oumuamua, the large cigar-shaped object that flew into and out of our solar system a few years ago. I want you to look very carefully at the flight path of this enormous object. You can see it coming in. There's the blue Earth, the third planet from the sun. This thing flies right up to the Earth, then suddenly turns and it accelerates away from us. It doesn't just turn as if it was acted upon by an outside force. It turns away and then it accelerates after doing so. The elongated shape of this object has never been observed before. This unprecedented shape was tumbling on a path that passed right by us. It seemed to have slingshot around the sun, actually cutting a path inside the orbit of Mercury before flying in a very deliberated manner right past the Earth. What Oumuamua was a warning. It was a warning by an advanced civilization from beyond the limits of our reach, showing us that it's capable of destroying us. Now, is that not God enough for you? That's more than God enough for me. This would be analogous to the concept of hell itself. Not that we're going to burn forever, but that we're going to burn, and then we're going to cease to exist forever. If you look at the evil that's all around us, it becomes a lot easier to believe that we are all closer to our own demise than we would like to realize.